Hello, this is TARDIS9 here. I'd just like to ask people if you could please not use this recording or this story at all for your works. This is because I am planning at one point to possibly self-publish this story alongside several other ghost stories in a non-Thomas the Tank Engine related collection. Thank you very much. And happy Halloween, everybody! A Carriage Compartment. Written and read by TARDIS9. Based on the railway series created by the Reverend Wilbert Audrey. Entry number 34. I, P.C. Thompson, have been summoned to the property of number 34, Windsor Drive, in Wellsworth. The house has been victim to a most brutal murder. There's no sign of any assailant, yet the victim's wounds were horribly mangled. There is little evidence to support the cause of the death, save for a written document, which I shall read to you now. Document reads as follows. I am writing this to you now, in order to inform you of these events. My name is Peter, an informal greeting I know, especially to those who have yet to have made my acquaintance, but a necessary one for now. For you see, certain eventualities and circumstances in my life have ensured that it is an utmost necessity that you be informed of these proceedings, simply for the benefit of public safety. As to the story itself, well, here it is. 3 men met together in a railway carriage. They had boarded the service at Tidmouth, hauled by an elderly Furness Railway K2 with the number 2 on his tender, pulling several brown coaches. The compartment in question was first class. The furnishings inside were pleasant enough. Only the warning signs against leaning out of the window or using the communication cord inappropriately offered any sense of uniformity. In contrast, the seats were well upholstered and delicately patterned. The walls between these and the luggage racks held maps of the main network and illustrations of country scenes, and the lighting was neither too dark nor too bright in the dark autumnal evening. 2 of these men sat next to each other. One wore a blue tweed suit with a straw boater hat. The other was clad in a black suit and tie with a bowler hat, clutching a newspaper under one arm. He looked every inch the English gentleman of the period. The third sat opposite them. He too looked well dressed, though weary, as though he had had the weight of the world thrust upon him. This man was dressed in a cream suit and had brown hair that curved upwards. He would otherwise have appeared quite handsome had he not presented a disposition of tiredness. The train got underway, and the men, with little else to do, made some casual conversation with each other. The man wearing the tweed suit introduced himself as Johnson, the figure in the black suit and bowler hat as Taylor, and the exhausted third person as Smith. Johnson was a professor. He specialised in modern history, or modern as it was then, for this was the year of 1933, and lectured at Alsborough. He had desired to take a break in his academic work and had elected to travel to a quiet place in the countryside where he would meet an old school friend. Besides, the house was close to a local branch line, and he, an avid railway enthusiast, intended to spend some time observing the line's operations. Taylor was a congenial person. He was a wealthy banker in Tidmouth and a man of significant financial means. The train was his main means of transport to and from his workplace, so he explained to the group, and as he owned 2 houses, one in the city and another in the country, he had elected to travel on it to his country house for the weekend. Smith was a doctor. He was based in Brendan and was simply using the train as a means of returning home for the day. He specialised in psychiatry and had visited Tidmouth for a lecture on the causes of a person's behaviour and its consequences. He had in fact been responsible for sending 20 people to an asylum, a figure he was not proud of, but as these figures were capable of significant harm towards others, he viewed as a necessity. So these men made these facts about themselves known to their present company. It had not started out like this. They began discussing the usual subjects, such as the weather and the delays to their journey. A failed engine had held up their travels by 5 minutes. Yet the fact that the journey would be over an hour took hold over them, and thus their conversation continued. It extended to their introducing themselves formally, and then to more extreme subjects, such as the current shape of the Mid-Sodor Railway and the situation in Germany. How the time passed while they were so deep in conversation. They had hardly left Tidmouth, it seemed, before they were approaching the Knapford Tunnel. When they had passed through Knapford Station, Taylor got up. Do excuse me, gentlemen, he said, but I must take advantage of the facilities. He got up and left the compartment before turning in the direction of the men's toilet. Smith leaned forwards as the compartment door closed. You know, Johnson, he said, I've got the uncanny feeling that I've seen that man before in some way. He probably just has one of those faces, Johnson remarked. Could be, Smith said. There was a momentary pause. I don't suppose I've told you about my first patient, have I? He asked. No, Johnson replied. Then permit me to do so. I had completed my studies when I was called to analyse the psychological condition of a man the local police force had arrested on suspicion of murder. They told me they'd found the man standing over the body in an alleyway. The body belonged to that of a woman, a baker's daughter, selling her wares. Her wrists showed signs of struggle through the deep bruises resembling fingers. Her torso and neck were ripped open. I swear to God I nearly vomited upon seeing this. But what most terrified me about this whole affair was that the man was smiling. It wasn't a smile you would have if you had received some good news or if you had cause for laughter. It was a smile with no warmth behind it. It showed all his teeth, each one sharper than the last. Witnesses had seen the man head into the alleyway and the woman approached him plying her trade. Instead, he forced her goods out of her hands and grabbed her before biting hard into her torso. She had likely attempted to escape going by her injuries, and indeed the witnesses recalled hearing a scream for help. They came to her side all too late. When the police arrived, the witnesses told their stories, and still the man did not change face. I can't begin to tell you how awful it was to see him standing in a pool of blood while that same red liquid streaked down his very face and body, and to brandish that smile on his face. He resembled a creature escaped from hell. I needn't say how glad I was when he was sentenced to life in a mental asylum. At last, the world would be free of him and his malice. I hear he's taken the lives of several small children in such a manner too. I cannot think what they must have gone through. But I know for certain one cause for these murders. This will sound ridiculous, but it is also true. All you need to do is to say his name, and he will appear before you like the devil. Then, what happens to you doesn't bear thinking about. Smith paused as the guard came in and checked their tickets. Once this was done, he resumed his story. I heard tell of such a thing in the village where he lived, he said. He lived there for most of his life. The villagers, from what I could gather, didn't give me much information. But what they gave me was enough. It seems that when he was a boy, this man's father beat him soundly for failing to arrive on time. You see, his father would yell out his name, and no matter where he was, the young boy had to come running to avoid his father's belt. The years went by, and this torture continued. I cannot imagine what went on through that child's head. All the beatings and torture and humiliation must have caused him to snap. He became violent, especially when others spoke his name. Eventually, he killed his parents with a knife, tearing the wounds open with his bare hands before making good his escape. It took the police days to locate him, and in that time the rumours spread. And as people spoke his name, so he appeared and cut their lives short. He must have killed dozens in this manner before he was caught. He is also a great master of disguise. Every time a witness came forward for one of these deaths, they gave an account of his appearance. It seldom was the same, except for the shape of his face, his dark, soulless eyes, and that devilish smile, both before and after he had carried out his wickedness. Smith finished, now in a cold sweat. And how do you know he had come to Tidmouth? Asked Johnson. He was committed to the asylum there. I assessed him before his trial. I don't mind saying that that was an ordeal I have no wish to discuss with anyone, even my family. But I will say this. I attended the lecture as I had said. But after that, I received an urgent telegram from the police saying that my services were required at the asylum as soon as possible. When I got there, I found the bodies of several poor souls from inside the building being taken away in a hearse. Not just staff members, but patients too. They showed me to the hell itself. A large hole stood in the doorway. It seemed that he had removed some of the bars by hand. Smith's voice seemed to be quickening in pace. And now he's free, he continued. There's no telling what he might do, especially when the information gets out. An incident such as that does not go unnoticed by the media, you see. Once it gets in the papers, heaven knows what will happen next. Likely a repeat of before, or an even worse rendition thereof. Oh God, the sins that we commit don't even amount to this evil among us. And I, inexperienced as I was then, I may well be a target. Listen to me now. Listen to me very carefully. Here he became desperate, clutching at Johnson's hands. You are a professor, aren't you? Yes, Johnson said. You've written books, haven't you? Done public speaking? Yes, both, Johnson said, wanting to know what all this was related to. Good, good. Listen to me carefully now, Johnson. I place the lives of countless others in your hands now. When I tell you his name is Solomon Macpherson, he will come for me, and if you so much as utter it, he will come for you too. He may even come if he sees his name in writing, but you have to warn others about him. Get the authorities onto it, the police, the army, anything, just so. A hiss of steam. The squeal of brakes. Johnson lurched towards Smith as he fell to the ground. There was only one explanation. Number 2 had incurred a steam leak, and the train has stopped to prevent a tragedy. But it was too late. The lights went out. Johnson felt Smith's body moving underneath him. He stood up. The compartment was pitch black. That was until a faint glow of blue arose from the doorway to the compartment. It settled behind a dark figure standing in the corridor. Steam arose all around the figure. Below him lay Smith's body, cut open at the torso and missing several organs. But what terrified Johnson more than other things was the devilish smile that showed the razor-sharp teeth. The smile that came from a man who resembled Taylor. They stared at each other for a while. Then the figure launched itself at Johnson, baring its teeth. It took hold of him, its icy cold hands clutching his ribs. Johnson pushed as hard as he could, but to no avail. This being, this monster of hell, this spawn of Satan seemed to have the strength of 10 men. It opened its mouth and bit sharply into his neck. Johnson opened his mouth to scream, but not a sound came out. And that is the end of it. You may assume that the two men were found dead when the creature left, before the lights came back on. But thanks to the good sense of both the coach to alert number 2, and the latter to ask the guard to check the coaches and alert the authorities, only one had died. Johnson, however, lived on, albeit with his vocal cords ripped out. Another engine came to rescue the stricken number 2 and take the train to the next station, where an ambulance stood waiting for Johnson. He soon recovered enough to walk at the hospital, but he never spoke again. He communicated via sign language, though this took him a while to master. You see, he preferred to write, just as I do. For I too am a railway enthusiast. I used to be a professor myself, and I don't speak. Not anymore. You see, my name is Peter Johnson, and I see him, even now. He doesn't like his name to be spoken or written. I sit here at my desk by the fireplace, pen in hand. The fire has gone out. Everything is dark now. And I see a figure before me. How this creature behaves could only have been brought on by so tormented a childhood. Nonetheless, Solomon McPherson had a choice, and he chose lunacy, murder, and cannibalism. He looks at me now. He is smiling, showing me his teeth, and he won't be so merciful this time. If this story gets out, I'll leave it to you, the reader, to... Who's that? Who's there? Who are you? What's your name? Oh, don't you dare. Don't you dare. Don't you stay away. You're assaulting a police officer. Stay away.